It is Wednesday. RawMikeRichards.com once again broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino, the home of RawMikeRichards.com in Calgary. Just heard the someone playing the slot machines beside me now. Normally, when I hear that, I'll be honest, I'm not wearing pants. Isn't that right, George Takei?
Oh, my.
Yeah. What if she's winning? Wonder if she's ever won. The last time that person won was Ben Franklin, her neighbor. Speaking of long time between winning, the Blue Jays win last night. Was it Juan Valdez? It was Valdez someone. He's gone like 3,000 games in between wins. So as stunning as a number that is, someone actually allowed him to play professional baseball 3,000 more games without winning. Who has that? I mean, the last time he would have won, probably Ron Jeremy was a size 32 pant. So you got to think about, just how long this guy's gone between wins. I mean, I'm glad for him, but it's almost a miracle. How did that happen? Coming up on the show today, a bunch of things. The big tuna, who apparently, and you can make this public, I believe, not that big. The tuna is now a slender, sleek tuna. Is that a good thing for him? You bet. I'm telling you, the 92 Grey Cup's going to be celebrated this weekend. And you look at the names on that team, and as I said last night, going out with all my degenerate friends and just sort of talking about, and a lot of them season ticket holders, that era of Calgary Stampeders, and you have to realize how good that team, and they could have won a lot more. And we'll talk to Bruce about that, just how, being on a team like that, just, Doug Flutie, of course, is the name that comes up, but Alan Pitts, I mean, you have to remember of that era, just how many times that combination happened and just how good they were. And that was, some real great stuff for the CFL. And we will talk about the meeting. I understand that Al Montoya is going to call. Apparently he and Bruce have some business, which I didn't know about. And Dutchie, Darren Titishan, who has not phoned, is also going to call up. And I guess he's got a story about him and Bruce. Don't know if it's a good one. Don't know if he wanted that necessarily public, but that's going to happen as well. We'll also talk a little later on about the decisions made by Hockey Canada as we see who the head coach is. Willie Desjardins is the coach. You've got a general manager in Sean Burke, and then Marty Brodeur is part of that management group in the Olympics that, depending on how you look at what that team is going to be, as you know, it's going to be a lot of guys, Canadian, who play in Europe. There's going to be probably contract guys from the AHL, and it's a challenge. My curiosity is how many people are that engaged in watching that team. Now remember, it's in South Korea, which means the time difference is going to be brutal. Remember Nagano? They were trying to watch that. That was brutal. Or is it? I don't know what it was. It's Japanese, like I know. I'm from Stouffville, Ontario. I don't give a rat's ass. But you never knew what was live. You never knew what was on. And so if you want to stay and watch the luge at 3 o'clock in the morning, I guess knock yourself out. But if Canada as a national program team, so the men's hockey team is playing, and you're not seeing Sidney Crosby, you're not seeing the players that you expect to see and that we have seen, are you really getting up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning to watch them play, Germany? Regardless of the team, Norway, is that something that's going to be that engaging for ratings that you really want to see that? Because my take on it probably is going to be that we will cheer and root for, in this case, the home team. But if they lose, we'll just nod our heads and go, wasn't our best. Not our best, guys. Pass the ketchup. It's not going to be people jumping off buildings because the makeup of this team isn't what's going to be considered the best Canadian players available. So you're going to look at it kind of like the way we look at the World Hockey Championships. The World Hockey Championships, when we're in it, did you see the game's over and wherever it is? If they lose, you go, well, that's the way it goes. And you finish watching either the rest of the NHL playoffs because, quite honestly, as we talked to Katrina LeMay-Doan yesterday, this country is built on the worship at the altar of professional sports, not amateur. And so if that continues, if we see that, I don't know what those ratings are going to be in, is it Pyeongchang? Is that, I think I'm saying it right. I'm using probably the local dialect on that one. I'm unsure. I just wonder exactly how many people are going to watch it. What about the Olympics there, George Takei? Are you interested in that?
Oh, my.
Yeah, I bet you are. You're watching rawmickrichards.com, either via the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. Remember, if you're seeing the little subscribe button in the bottom, press on it. All the numbers have gone up this week. They've also gone up massively on the actual website to become part of the Richards Army. You can do that. Go to rawmickrichards.com and subscribe. You can also do it on Facebook as well. We've had some real nice results so far this week, as once again we broadcast from the Elbow River Casino. And I think the people are the slots people are getting closer. I don't know if that's a good thing. So we're going to bring in Bruce right now of the we are from the of the number of years, but the '92 Grey Cup team is the one that is being celebrated. This is something I think people are just going to love. Although we've never had anyone, I don't think, this tall sit in the chair. It is pretty close. And Bruce, just before we go, are we getting that call from Darren Tatishan? Because I think Dutchie from TSN actually does have some sort of.
I didn't find him at a wedding, did I?
No, I don't.
No? Okay, good.
Is that it? Because that's one of the stories.
No. It's not.
Would you like? It's is it not coming through for you? Okay, let me just see, because we're again, we have not attempted one of the phone calls that we're famous for. Is that at any point? I believe it's coming in once again, broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino, and just waiting for that phone call. Is this Dutchie? Hello, welcome to rawmickrichards.com. Going to try that again? Is it not working? Oh. Yeah, I don't think that microphone, I don't think that's picking up.
You know, I also understand that you're being in Calgary, so God knows what's going on.
Okay. You know what? We'll try that. We'll try that phone call later. This is what happens when things go awry live. So let's talk to the big tuna, then, and not as big, you're saying now.
Well, 270, so I'm down by maybe 265. Still big, but
that is big.
I mean, I was tipping them at 315 at some days, so
315.
Yeah.
That's playing weight.
That's playing weight, and you know what they do? They bury the big dogs early. So I thought I'd better at least be a medium dog.
Well, good for you. I mean, man, I look at you know, the teams that you were on, how good they were,
Yeah.
and you know, some people say, you know, what would it be like protecting Doug Flutie? I said, I don't know. I think they probably should ask you. What was that like?
You know what? It was a couple of things. I do think it makes your job a little easier when a guy like that can scramble. So on straight drop back and things, if they're worried, they really got to keep the alley, so it can really help you as an offensive lineman. The other thing is it gets you real tired because he drags the plays out. And when you're that weight, chasing him around, trying to help him, it can be a long day after the game.
Well, let's talk about that, because
outstanding.
I bet you there'd be a lot of offensive line coaches, a lot of you know, high school coaches or whatever, just sort of watching this interview right now. And of course, the one thing that drives them nuts, when you design a play, the offensive linemen know where they're supposed to go.
Right.
The thing that Doug would do is see something different and then break off and do something, you know, as they say, magical. That would not be easy as an offensive lineman.
Well, yeah, it's yes and no again, right? He could throw the ball on time, do all those things, but you had to keep going and go. There was no plays off because, you know, I remember one time it was just a sneak. It was a quarterback sneak, and we're supposed to get a yard, and I look out of the pile, and he's like 40 yards downfield, like he went through there like a snake or something. So, yeah, it was just long days because he was always moving, never gave up on a play.
Well, you had a lot of guys to throw to, and Alan Pitts, who I don't know if he's going to be here this weekend, but when
I don't think he is. I don't know that 100%, but you know, Pitts, Sapunjas, Derek Crawford.
I mean,
Pee Wee Smith. I mean,
oh, I love Pee Wee
right?
Smith.
Yeah, so great targets.
One of my favorite moments was in Edmonton, where he catches the ball for a touchdown, keeps on running, and goes right into the dressing room. Yeah. He just left.
Actually, I saw the highlight video for this, and that's where it starts off, is the 1991 finishing it off in the Western Final with, Pee Wee. He's still kicking around town.
Oh, he was a character. And
good guy.
You know, you look back at it, you know, there's a lot of characters on that team, including yourself.
I'm retired from that business. I'm doing a bit of the hot stove lounge on Friday, and I was thinking, you know, got my head shaved. I got taped upside down naked in Ottawa. I got pied in the face. Cortez abusing me. I mean, I wonder what the statute of limitations are on some kind of There's got to be an HR issue there somewhere.
Well,
right?
I'm sure there is. Let me ask you this. So, 6'7"?
6'5".
6'5", 315 pounds.
Yeah.
How does a guy that size end up being naked and upside down? How do they achieve this?
35 guys. It was my birthday. And unfortunately, I had to run back, media day the day before. It was in Ottawa on my birthday. And I had to run past all the media.
Oh, my God.
And some lady from the Ottawa Citizen said, look more like a little tuna to her. True story.
You had so many.
You can either fight him or get carpet burns.
Yeah, so
your call, right? So
you let it go.
Yeah, that's a beautiful body. I didn't care.
That's where you. Bruce Covington, by the way, joining us here on rawmikерichards.com, broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino. And, when you come out of Weber State, and a lot of people may be not familiar with just how good that football program is. I mean, year after year, they're it's a smaller school, so sometimes they don't might be aware of what they do or a bowl that they have a chance to go into. But they're just one of the many schools, I would say, that produce excellent football players, but you're not going to see them because you're not LSU, you're not Alabama, you're not USC. But regardless, that is a good school to go to.
And particularly in Canada, I don't think they recruit as heavy. But if you think, I played with Rob Hitchcock, Obi Spanik, Gerald Wilcox, Rob Troublecock, Jeff Mitchell. I think at one time we had 11 guys in the CFL. From my time at Weber, just those 4 years.
Where did Brian Strong go, or is he in
Brian
Montana?
Strong was down there.
He was Weber State as well.
Yeah, I think Doug Bettershell, Kevin Powell. And then I played with NFL guys, Jamie Martin, Alfred Papunu, Roger Ruzek, the kicker. So, it was a small football school, but there was 25,000 students. It was one of the bigger schools no one's ever heard of.
But see, that's the great thing I think about football. Not necessarily CFL, but CFL because they're not going to get, the number one guy out of Alabama. They're going to find different ways. That doesn't mean that, again, these conversations people have about what's better, and they fight about NFL, CFL. Like, oh, well, if you're a football person, you don't give a shit. That's not even a conversation to me.
Yeah.
Because you're going to start talking about. I'm if I want to talk about Middle Tennessee State. A football person goes, well, I know who comes out of there because that's a good football area as well. I don't need to say, well, USC or Alabama's a way better school. Yeah, but that's a stupid comparison. And quite frankly, when you look at the CFL and the guys you played with, obviously played with Heisman Trophy winners. You played with All-Americans. You played with guys who did play at USC and UCLA.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think the difference between the level of schools and even the CIAU is like the 1A schools have 5 or 6 really high caliber guys, and the rest could interchange with every other school in America.
Yes.
I believe, right? And the top blue chip guys, they're able to get those guys at some of the schools. But the rest, I lined up against first team All-Americans.
Sure, you did.
And kicked their ass.
And that's
Mitch Donahue and guys that ended up in the NFL, but I went head to head and I kicked their ass.
well, and you know what? I think that's motivation when people start talking about when. Oh God! Vince Ferragamo came up here. A lot of those guys, and they're thinking, or Ricky Williams for that brief time he played. It's like was he in the prime of his career? Maybe not. No, Vince Ferragamo, he came almost out like he was. He, quite honestly, he was. But it's a different game, and I think we start talking about offensive linemen. If you're not Canadian, like you're originally a Manitoba boy?
Manitoba, Winnipeg.
Yeah. So if you're Canadian, you understand just how big that field is. But if you're coming up as the huge offensive lineman, which is why, when you get into these arguments, it makes no sense. You wouldn't pick a 375 offensive, lineman to come up and play in this field, especially with the Doug Flutie running quarterback. He wouldn't make it a quarter.
Game, yeah, and blocking in space is a lot different. It took me a while I was fairly nimble, but that field's so wide, and things start to move. Your angles are different, and they're a yard off the ball. You got to really be able to move, and you got to get downfield too. Now,
in terms of the running backs that you would have gone through of that era of Stampeders, because you had a bunch of real good ones too. Who was the one that? And again, offensive linemen like to be the hammer. They don't like to be the nail so much when you're doing all that pass blocking. But when you got to run the ball, who was the guy that you just loved to block for?
For sure, Calvin Anderson.
Calvin,
Keevan Jenkins was around, Tony Stewart, but Calvin Anderson, I got to see him. He looks like a bowling ball, actually. He got into the Hall of Fame this year, and I got to spend some time with him here in Calgary. Good guy, and he just got every yard. So he's the guy by far in my time.
Now you talk about George Cortez, and a lot of guys who are considered to be, sometimes at the time about an offensive guru, about all these things that he did. You played for a lot of coaches from college on. Is there any one coach that sort of stands out to you and you think, I don't know if I ever had a better coach than this? And it may not be professional. Who was that for you?
I think George was good for me as a rookie. I didn't play much. I only played 2 years of O-line in my life before I got drafted, so I needed someone to hammer on me. I didn't get to play with Dan Durazio. I was injured, but he was real good. And then I had this real special guy, Lawrence Livingston.
Did he smoke a pipe? Did he have?
No, he was our offensive line coach at Weber, and just a real different good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the names?
Back in those days, I had Mike Zimmer and Bobby Petrino. They were the Weber coaches.
Bobby Petrino?
Oh,
seriously, really?
Yeah, imagine that. Mike Zimmer on offense and Bobby Petrino on...
but this is what I'm talking about.
Mike Price. I mean, it was a stacked staff. All those guys are head coaches in NCAA or in the NFL.
Had Paul LaPolice on when he was doing work for TSN, and he was talking about, I guess, his time in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And so he was saying at the time when, Chip Kelly at that point was all the rage with Oregon, and they're running that up tempo offense, the sort of the read option. He said, well, yeah, that was talked about when we were coaching at New Hampshire, the Catamounts. And people, if they're not aware of it, would say, well, what is that? Well, again, that's a football conversation for football people. You don't necessarily, have to go to Washington.
You got to start somewhere also, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think most of it. So when you take a look at football now, and it's funny when all the talk of read option came south of the border, like Wally Bond was going, well, we've been running that for the last 40 years. I don't know why this is so special. But do you think football's played that much differently now than when you played? Do you think it is?
Yeah, in the CFL, no. But I do see the NFL trying to open it up. But the big difference, and I've been on the sideline. Garcia was a buddy, and we would get to go down to his games. And to me, there's some extraordinarily big linemen, but linemen are linemen. They're all pretty big: college, CFL, NFL. Receivers are receivers. There's a few studs here and there, but those linebackers are big in the NFL.
And can run, can move.
And putting your quarterback in harm's way of those guys, I think they're trying to do it. I just don't think it's sustainable because look at RG3, right? He's got pounded.
Yeah, exactly.
Ball, right? And Cam was moving around a little bit a couple of years ago. He's never been the same. He got lit up in the Super Bowl.
Well, and
so a guy can really get hurt down there because there's not a lot of escape routes. So I think they're trying to open it up in the States, but just with the size of that field and the size of the guys, I think it's going to be difficult to have longevity in some of those skilled spots that are trying to run off tackle or right in between the tackles.
Well, you bring up a point too when you start talking about quarterbacks that sort of in college were able to do certain things, and it's just another world. You can't even compare what happens in NCAA football to pro. And someone said, do you think? I'm trying to think of who asked me if Bo Levi Mitchell could play in the NFL. I said, well, the one thing it's sometimes not even about necessarily a skill set. Sometimes it's about, well, can he be like a Joe Flacco, Ben Roethlisberger, sort of a bigger guy that stands in the pocket. They know he's not going to take off because they need to have their quarterback around. I said, so you're kind of having to be someone who really manages the pocket well, doesn't leave it, and it leads itself to be, the 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" kind of guy and built kind of big. I said, so that's why sometimes in the CFL we get guys who aren't that.
Yeah, I do think the NFL has, I went to the NFL Combine and they take pictures of video of you in your underwear. Right, so they
really
they look at you and they say that's an offensive lineman, that's a quarterback.
By looking at you,
right? The eyeball test.
Yes.
I mean, Garcia would have felt the eyeball test.
Right.
Flutie dogged him his whole life.
Yeah.
Competitors, right? Like Doug had a pretty good run in the NFL when they really let him have a chance. And Jeff, I mean, he tore it up.
Yeah.
And so Bo, I don't know. He's a competitor. So if he got down there, and who knows if he'll go there? I hope not. But if he gets the chance for him, I hope he is. I've got to meet him, and he's a friend. But I really don't know what the measurement is, because it doesn't always work out the way, the big, tall, strapping lads. So competitiveness plays a big role in that stuff.
Well, that's why when people start falling in love with analytics, I'm like, well, yeah, but that doesn't measure heart. That doesn't measure a competitor. That doesn't measure character. And so as much as you can get sort of an understanding of maybe where that guy might fit from his how fast he is and how tall he is, it still doesn't measure the guy. Otherwise, as you mentioned, some of those athletes, they're never playing in the NFL.
Yeah, you gotta until you line up with the boys, you don't know really what. I remember when Jeff went in, it was 95. Doug got hurt.
I was at that game.
Classic.
I was at that game.
Jeff was a terrible practice player. He just was.
Really?
He thought we were doomed. And the guy was on fire, energized the team, threw 5 or 6 touchdown passes.
Oh, he went crazy.
Never looked back ever again.
The enthusiasm was like, it reminded me of when there was Garcia. Now I know playing golf when he was that young, where he'd hit the ball and then run up the hill to go and see where the ball went. I just think that he showed this college-like enthusiasm from game number 1, and he just destroyed Edmonton, destroyed them.
Tough as hell, right? I mean, he took a beating in the NFL.
But people don't realize how tough he is.
What's that?
People don't realize how tough you have to be to take that.
One of the toughest guys I ever played with. One of the toughest guy. One of the craziest guys I ever lived with.
Okay. Well, this is called rawmikerichards.com. Do you got something you can share with us? I mean,
no.
No. Yeah. Okay.
I did see him about a month back. I was down in San Diego.
Yeah.
Looks like he's just waiting for a phone call. He is jacked and looking good.
Really? Well, he also had the body type was a little different than people. Someone called him skittish once. It was south of the border. They called him skittish, and I thought, well, if you're trying to get out of the way of the massive humanity that's after you, you might want to bounce around a little bit too. But I mean, and so actually that leads to the conversation of player safety, which is so massive now, and that's why I ask sometimes: does the game change a whole bunch? Now you see, there's a lot of rule changes in the NFL just to make sure, kick returns are almost a thing of the past, right? And that was one of the more exciting parts of the game. But because of, quite honestly, the massive legal aspect of it, players banding together. Like, what was your feeling when you heard that players in the NFL, to begin with, were banding together to put together a lawsuit that talked about, concussed players? What was your feeling as a former player, a professional player, hearing that?
There's two sides to it, right? Because I think if you, and I was joking, I think it was Sue, if you gave a football player a lie detector and said, when someone took your helmet away when you were concussed, did you go back and get it? Did you want to go back on the field? You're kind of just wired that way. But then the other side of it is the team, if they did have knowledge, need to protect you.
Here, just move that microphone a little closer to you, Bruce. There we go. Yeah.
And they need to protect you from yourself, right? So it's interesting. I've had a lot of concussions, and I'm okay, and I'm involved in that study in Toronto, and they seem to think I'm good, but I know a lot of people that are not.
Right.
And so if there was knowing knowledge of what was going on, you should be held accountable and responsible, because it's a violent game, man. I mean, we had our golf hole at the alumni tournament. My gal was working the hole. She goes, Jesus, everyone was limping out of the cart, walking around.
Yeah.
So you got your body and your brain damaged. Yeah, I think the NFL, they got that money. Yeah, you better pay the boys.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a very violent sport, but as you said, the one thing in that is that when you're wired that way, you like the contact.
Yeah.
I mean, a pit drill. I know those guys. Just coaching high school football here in town. There were some guys that they saw the pit drill coming, they weren't big on it. Then there were other guys, and it wasn't necessarily the big guys either. Yeah. They just couldn't wait to hear that crack of that plastic.
Yeah. I think the lack of double days now is a good idea. Yeah, the season's long, the injuries, the rosters are small. They're trying to do, but you still got to. It's a violent game. Lineman, it hasn't changed anything. Running back, not really.
Mm-hmm.
It's the receivers and the quarterbacks that need to be protected, and a lot of time they're in vulnerable positions. So I think that needs to be there.
Now, talk to Rob Maver about the one issue I do have in the CFL with the flags. And I don't know if I'm that in love with coaches, after the play's over and there's a challenge flag because they thought they saw a pass interference on maybe the other side of the field. And I'm not saying that maybe it even isn't pass interference. But for the flow of the game as athletes, I think we always understood that there's officials out there and we both got to play with these guys. So unless there's some sort of conspiracy, if he has a shit call on that side, then we're probably getting a shit call on this side at some point. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of live with it as an athlete. But now you have this thing, and we're not getting rid of replay. It's not that I don't think on certain plays, like an important play, you're going upstairs, you're looking at it, you're challenging it. I get that. But I'm seeing flags being thrown all over the place by coaches. I'm like, you know what? I think we got to clean that. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's as a fan, I go to all the games. I don't know if you watched Saturday, but there was an incomplete pass, or a pass. Jones on Saskatchewan said it was incomplete. He won the challenge, but you could tell it was pass interference. And then right away, Dave throws the flag for pass interference.
Yes.
It must have been 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In the flow of the game, and I've never had to deal with that as a player, but I know as a fan, I hate it.
Yeah.
They got to clean it up somehow, because they're just taking too long to make decisions. And then this year in particular, they haven't been very good at it. There's no blown calls even by the relay.
Yes, exactly. And I'm thinking if you're there trying to watch the flow of a football game, and coaches are always going to talk about trying to get in a rhythm, you can feel when a football game's in rhythm, and it's really enjoyable to watch. And sometimes it's just really, it just takes away from the flow of the game. And I also think if you're south of the border and you're watching that thing, and they're like, is the coach saying that there was a penalty and they're actually going to go with it? I'm like, yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a bit much. I'm not a big fan of all the flags. It's
so
not fun to watch.
So now that you're the sleek, the slender
Yes.
Bruce Coverton, if people don't know, and again you're in and around the town, but so what is the industry? What are you doing now these days?
You know what? I have a company. It's actually called Big Fish Staffing. If you've ever seen the logo, it's a tuna. But I do full-time office placements and full-time temporary staff. So I've been doing that my whole time since I was with the Stamps, but finally opened up my own shop. I'll be going on 2 years here pretty quick, and loving it and enjoying it and doing well at it. Staying a little bit healthy.
Well, you look great.
Yeah, a few surgeries in the last few years, but overall, I can't complain.
Now, of the guys, it's so funny what guys may do after the CFL, because they didn't sit there and get $13 million a year. So basically, you're going to rely either on your reputation as an athlete in that city to get something. Sometimes it's the degree that you actually got, which I sort of miss those days where guys actually went through, and not that I think that in this day and age that every football player has to be a senior and go through the 4 years. But I also think that, I guess there's two different discussions here, but I think in collegiate sports out of NCAA, when you start getting the one-and-done guys, when you start getting guys who've only, finished 2 years, you're still pretty young. You're still pretty immature. I think their bodies, a lot of times the bodies haven't even grown into. So if I'm watching the NBA and sometimes the NFL, I'm like, they're just not men yet, and they're playing against men. And to me, it just takes away from there was a time where a quarterback was drafted. He's going to put the baseball cap on backwards like this, have the clipboard, and watch the senior guy do it. Now it's like, get in. And I don't think the game's better for it.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of pressure to perform and have a good team. So taking chances on these young guys. Now, I think kids are more mature nowadays, and the systems have developed. And, it's particularly in football. Be 21 years old going into a room full of, they're animals.
Yeah.
I walked in the locker room and I was 6'5", 300 pounds. I got to block guys like this in this league. Every team had one or two of those. Now there's locker rooms full of these guys that could all bench 400 pounds, could all run fast, and we're all big and strong. It's a different world.
So you even think that the guys are even bigger now?
Yeah, I think when you look at some of the positions, the guys they look bigger. I don't know if they're stronger or tougher. Or I wish our line was a little meaner.
Right. You thought your line should have been meaner.
This line
now currently.
Well, we got to get them together, the same guys in the.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're just.
Well, Bruce, thanks so much for coming on. I know it's going to be a very special weekend with the '92 Grey Cup winning team, but in that era, when I look at the '90s, and so the Larry Rickman era and all those guys that he brought to that team, regardless of people like off the field, I'm talking as a fan of what happened on the field, and I'm almost amazed, and I wonder if you look back on it, just how many Grey Cups do you think you should have won? Because I'm sure that's got to cross through your mind.
Well, if you look at it, I might be wrong, but I don't think we lost a regular season home game my first 3 years.
Yeah.
You have to check that, but I'm pretty certain. But football is a one-game series, and in Canada, you look at the '93 Grey Cup that we lost. It was -40.
Yeah.
Propane liquefied. That's how cold it was, and a skilled team that we had. It was very difficult to compete. So you've got the weather, one game wonder. I remember Reggie Slack beat us one year.
Yeah.
How many people remember Reggie Slack?
Yeah.
He ran for 200, threw a bunch more, left Edmonton, and got destroyed by Flutie in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, it was brutal.
You know what? He just had the game of his life.
And I also think that year that in the home playoff game when it snowed in the second half and Dan McManus ends up throwing to Darren Flutie.
Yeah.
I mean, and watching
that was
those.
the toughest one for me because I
was devastated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think I had any skin in the game. I don't think I was a degenerate back then. But I watched and I thought that was one of the toughest losses I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was the toughest one I've ever experienced.
So that won't come up too much this weekend.
We won't talk
You were going to do that. Big Slim Tuna, thanks, buddy. You're such a good guy for doing this.
There's a lunch on Friday. They can contact the Stamps, and there's also game tickets and a VIP tailgate that if people want to meet the boys, everyone's going to be at those events.
Okay, so how do they do that? If for those,
I think you can just go to the Stampeder website, but there's a legacy lunch, and then on the game day, I think they're setting up on that practice field. for a couple thousand people. It's going to be a great time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But all the boys will be there and get autographs, and then lots of tickets available too.
That's great. Tuna, thanks so much for coming in. Bruce Covington, ladies and gentlemen, joining us here on rawmikeRichards.com, here broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino. And as you heard, if you'd like to get up close and personal, it's still available if you contact the Stampeders office. And again, of those teams and of that time, I think that what Bruce was a part of is that they didn't lose much. And with Doug Flutie, even if they were losing, you thought they were going to win. If someone had said, could they have won 3 or 4 Grey Cups? I mean, a dynasty, I think to a degree they were, which is sometimes when I look at the word, I understand. We measured it against like an Edmonton Oilers team that, Montreal Canadiens in the 70s. I mean, that was the dynasty 4 or 5 times. What sport do you possibly think that someone is going to win 4 or 5 times? I think if you win 2, you're into, I mean, If I'm looking at football as well, to be that banged up on what they have to do, and as Bruce just said, football, that's why football is so different. Somebody has the game of their life, and the other team shits the bed, and that's just the way it is, and you go home. There is no second game. There are no gimmies. There's no playbacks. There's no rematches. If that's how it is, that's how it is. And it's one of the reasons that I actually really love football. So big thanks to the Big Tuna coming in here today. Looking at Twitter, which I have not got a chance to. Well, there's a cool picture taken by Joanne. I'm going to retweet that out. Good stuff. Once again, if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, it's right there when it comes up, the little red banner. Hit that so you don't miss anything. What else do we got going on here on Twitter? I'm just taking a look now. Just a lot of people watching it, loving it. There's there are people. Why are they talking about Playboys? Why would the Playboy thing come up? Not that I don't love it. Like you people out there don't know what I'm talking about. How could Playboy, by the way, decide to not have naked women in it? Like, are you going to McDonald's and they're not selling meat? I don't get it. What, for the articles? Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, no one's doing that. Also, as we talked about it beforehand, the news of the Canadian national team, what they're choosing for the Olympics. Tom Rennie, who always does such an excellent job, has put together a team. And so Willie Desjardins is going to be the head coach, long-time, Hockey Canada guy. Sean Burke, the general manager, and he's got his hands full in trying to put together that team. And Marty Brodeur, I thought was interesting to be part of that management group on what they're going to do. My question again is, if you're Canadian, I'll throw that out there if you want to answer on Twitter, rawmikeRichards.com, whatever team that they put out there, is it enough to make you get up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning to watch that team play Denmark, play Italy, I don't know, Latvia? Are you getting up for that? Because something tells me as long as they win, you will. The moment it looks like they're not going to achieve something, that you're out. And it's not that you're going to start jumping off the ledges of buildings either. I just don't know how engaging or how committed you are emotionally to a team that doesn't have Sidney Crosby or Jonathan Taves, or you go down the list of all the players that you would like to see. It's just the way it is. And I'll be honest, when you have that time change, I think it normally hurts the Olympics anyways, but I just don't know, again, how engaged this audience is going to be. It was interesting talking to Katrina LeMay-Doan yesterday on the possibility of the Olympics being back in Canada, being held in Calgary once again in, what did you say, 2026. So if you're in Calgary, I don't know, I think they could do it just simply because they've done it before. The infrastructure's there, and some of those buildings that are they'll be over 40 years old in this town are still world class. They still use them. The speed skating pad is still top notch, and you got to hand it to Calgary. That's what they did. So, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think that you are that interested in whatever that team happens to be? I mean, they're talking about, and guys like Tom Rennie are talking about the talent that they see in the Spengler Cup. Do you watch this? The Spengler Cup? Is that something that, it's a cool event, and if you've ever been over there, it's kind of a bucket list thing to do, but is that something that is enough to get you up? Now, Dave King is also part of that. Dave King, legendary, he's just a fantastic guy, and he started talking about some of the possibilities on players that could be there, and just what it means when you start putting the Canadian, that red maple leaf on your chest, that special things happen, and I certainly don't deny that, and a guy would know would be Dave King. and talking about it. My question is just how emotionally invested are you going to be no matter who is making that team. In Pyong, am I saying this right? Pyeongchang? Pyeongchang, anyone? Pyeongchang? I'm sure there's people who know what I'm talking about in here. Pyeongchang? Is that a swear word? Is that, did I just say something bad about your grandma? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm a small town guy. I really don't know a lot. I haven't been around the world a lot. Just throwing it out there. And nice logo, by the way. How shit are these logos? I don't know who's getting the jobs for these things. I don't know who's hiring people for like $250,000, $1 million to go, it'd be great. Let's make just like the colors of the rings and just make it look like a little stick house. Seriously? Did a 10-year-old do this logo? And that's what happens. The whole Canada 150. Did you like that logo? How long did that take with the guy who probably did it had a couple of stubbies in front of him and just said, well, if I put the 150 here and put Canada on top, I think that looks pretty good. It was shitty too. There's another $250,000 for, I don't know, some guy up in Red Deer. Is that where it came from? I don't know. No offense to Red Deer. I'm just saying. I don't see a lot of art coming from Red Deer. We know it didn't come from Saskatchewan because they're too busy doing stuff. Looking at the fighting that seemingly continues to go on with, you follow on almost like a really bad soap opera that you don't care how it ends. The LeBron James, Kyrie Irving sort of back and forth on where he's going to go, what he thinks he's going to do, and Cleveland all of a sudden. The infighting about it, I just don't understand how a team that had everything going for it and still does. I mean, everyone in the East is absolutely fearing playing this team, and now the bickering really, I just don't understand it. I mean, LeBron has always been an excellent professional, but this is the kind of stuff when we talk about keeping things, in the locker room. This is the opposite of that. How does that get so far away from them? So, see, there's headlines this morning talking about what in the world is happening in Cleveland. I don't know. I don't get it to a degree. And so if you feel that Kyrie Irving is going to be traded for that team, I think LeBron and friends are still going to – I think they'll still win the East. I think they're still good enough to do it. And when Kyrie wants what he thinks he deserves, and that's kind of how it feels right now, then maybe, just maybe, he's going to find out. Be careful what you wish for. Is all I'm saying. Broadcasting live from the Elbow River Casino here in Calgary. Now, do we want to try another phone call? Do we want to, Russell? Okay, good, because we only have 2 hours left in the show, and we already talked about the Blue Jays. We talked about what's happening this weekend, and I think Grandma's over there still trying to win her rent. That's the one thing you got to enjoy about a casino. There is a culture that exists in every casino that I'm really unaware of. But I have to admit this, and this goes to the Vegas people. If you love going out to Vegas, you know what I'm talking about. The sound, that sound of the slots, the sound of the sadness, I guess is what I'm talking about. But you always think you have a chance. I know there's the game back here that, have you played that goldfish game? There's nothing that takes a middle-aged man back to basically a 12-year-old than playing one of those games, and it's like, you get a bonus. Fling, 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 fling. Little goldfish come by, and you're like, you just lose control. It's like, come on. And a little boop, boop, boop. 50? Oh, fuck you, machine. You're some shit. Goldfish. Take it easy, Mike. What's the matter with you? You're 54. Because you didn't get the little... Like, they got weird games, though. There's a Partridge Family one, I think. The Family Feud one, you gotta figure in any casino, Family Feud is going to be pretty popular. I mean, you're one step away from hee-haw at that point, and people are sitting there. Oh, there was a Love Boat one. What the? Why would you? How do you equate Julie and Doc as some sort of challenging game? I don't know. Or Julie, maybe it should be called Rehab. Is she in? Is she out? And there's something just a little sexy about that. When I found out that Julie, and be honest, back in the 70s, you would have had a crush on her because everyone did. And then you heard she kind of fell off the rails a little bit. What was your initial thoughts? Well, maybe we can get her. Maybe we can get her now. Maybe if you show up late enough in a bad place, she's on the side of the road, she doesn't know where she is, there are a lot of guys thinking maybe this is my chance. Well, it wasn't. The Love Boat. The Love Boat, the slot game. Kiss, anything with Kiss on it, I'm gone. I see that paint. If I see a Gene Simmons face, I'm going over there. I don't know what you win. I know what you lose, including your dignity when you play the Kiss game. But there's something about it now. This place is packed. We're almost 11:45 Mountain Time. It is the great location. And look, they're longtime friends here. Look forward to the association. We're thinking we're probably going to come back sometime in October. Going to do a night at Yuck Yucks. That's right. I'm going to get back up on stage and do some stuff. There's a lot of people that, of course, you see on the show all the time. I think Jimmy the Bag is going to be here in October as well. I don't know what Rob Pugh's schedule is. We'll try to get him. Darren Frost. You never know what Frosty is. If you're not familiar with Frosty, you might remember the sad Wayne Gretzky story of when he was on the Dickie D bike in Brantford, saw Wayne come back because he was training, chased him on his Dickie D bike. Gretzky jumps over like a little gully, knowing very well that he couldn't be followed. The Dickie D bike flips upside down and throws Frosty. And Frosty goes, and he laughed at me. Wayne Gretzky fucking laughed at me. So when he says he helps all kids, no, he doesn't. So we'll try to do that in October. I see Brian Callen, actually from Fighter and the Kid. You'd see him from Joe Rogan. He's a long-time, actually, Rogan friend. He's been on the Goldbergs. He's been on Mad TV. You might know him. He's going to be here, too, in October. So we're thinking maybe we might kind of hook that up as well. So looking forward to that. Once again, as we make our picks, we'll do a lot of that probably tomorrow, I want to say. And I think the way to describe it this week is, now let's just take a look at a number on what they're saying the Calgary game is going to be, because I got to be honest, for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, it's going to start looking a little desperate. And for a team that they thought they would have, they just seemingly they can't stop anybody. And through the air, they're having a real tough time. So let's just take a look at the magic of okay, the internet. That's good. Let's do it in English. Just take a look at sports. If that number for the Stampeders, anything under 14, I think I'm going to take. Come on, internet, let's go. Oh my God, look how shit this is. Okay, I'm going to start losing it. Get that phone call ready? Okay, guess not. Here we go. Let's take a look at the CFL this week and some of the numbers. And once again, Bet Regal. It's right on our website now. So if you've signed up on rawmicrichards.com to be part of the Richards Army, the logo is right there. So just click on that icon, that link, and register and bet away. And I'm going to tell you that this week, I don't know how difficult the other games are, but I just don't see Hamilton coming through on, I would say, a big night like this. The reality is sometimes if you watch hockey games and they have the big ceremony. So there you have. So Russell Graham plays for whatever, well, it'd be a terrible team. And so the video's there for 15 minutes. Everyone's crying. They unveil the jersey. They retire it. His family comes out. They're crying. Very often the home team that does that, they lose. I bet you the numbers, if I had to take a look at it, I bet you like 70% of the time, for whatever reason, they lose. I don't think that's going to happen. Right now, that number, well, okay, look, I think I know what I'm talking about here. Minus 13. I said anything under 14 is a gift. Minus 13, you might want to take that. Other numbers this week, the Montreal Alouettes at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Every game that the Alouettes play is tight. I look at that defense. You know, you're talking about Darian Durant coming back as quarterback. I thought, you know, the CFL at times, you're taking a look at who's running. Seriously? I mean, you got Kevin Glenn still in the league, but the one thing about the Montreal Alouettes is they've got a staunch defense. They're going to stop some people. Every game they play is really close. In fact, most of the games in the CFL this year, they are pretty tight, usually 6 points and under. It is now minus 3.5 Winnipeg, and that's a tight number. The total is 51. That's a tough game to call. I mean, you want to put the Blue Bombers, who have blown a couple of games this year, but I wouldn't go much over 3.5. If it does, you might want to start taking a look at the Montreal Alouettes. It's just the way that they play. The BC Lions and the Edmonton Eskimos. How many Eskimo fans here? How many fans of Edmonton? There's one man over there. There's one guy from Edmonton. Are you wearing the sweatpants and the good shoes? Do you got that going for you? Okay, very brave man here, and actually a very lazy crowd. I got to be honest right here. There's just not a lot going on. They're just really dreaming of bacon at this point. BC Lions, Edmonton Eskimos, pretty much the game of the week. We're talking about two teams that, if you want to call them, aside from Calgary, when they'll get healthy, this is a pretty good game. BC Lions on the road again. They've been on the road a lot. It is the Eskimos minus 1.5. I think I'd be tempted to take the home team, but that is pretty interesting. And also too, as you'll see, and Bet Regal has it as well. The games decided from 1 to 6, they pay huge. It's like 4, sometimes 5 times your money. This year in the CFL, that's the ones I've been taking and winning big. So that game going to be tight for sure. And the Argos at the Saskatchewan Roughriders. How many Rough Rider fans here today? See, that's surprised because I think someone's lying. They're always they're somewhere. Maybe Grandma there is trying to. Is she playing the Goldfish game? What is that? Do people win on slots? Is that a real thing? Because I'm not so sure. I see these people; they're very concentrated. There are a lot of elderly people in their thousands, sitting there, waiting for that magical moment. But they're there for like a very long period of time. So my question is: have they just aged in front of that machine, waiting for it to happen? Because I never see anyone win. I don't know, and especially on Goldfish. You know who you are. Once again, the Argos Saskatchewan Roughriders, that is -3. It's in Saskatchewan in what I think is a very cool building. But right now, +3 for the Argos. I think I'd be taking that. I don't know necessarily, that's a football number that you don't want to cross, but at +3, I'd probably be taking the Toronto Argos. Once again, this weekend in Calgary, if you want to go to the game, I think there might be some tickets left for the big ceremony for the 92 Grey Cup team. But if you want to go to the Legacy Luncheon, I think they're calling it, contact the Calgary Stampeders. And they've got tickets for that luncheon. You get to go on the field. There's what do they say, like 1,000 people or 3,000 people they're going to make available so you can be on the field when guys are working out. And, of course, the legendary Doug Flutie will be there, amongst others. If you're looking for so Alan Pitt may not be there, but I think of that time and those teams, boy, they used to beat up on some people pretty good. So it's going to be a big weekend here in Calgary. Once again, we mentioned the Blue Jays. They win, but do you really care? I mean, right now the big talk with Toronto is how far that build or rebuild is going to be, and I just don't think you're going to see the tear down. And I don't think if you're going to set it on fire, it's just going to take too long to come back with too many guys. Now, they have a couple of prospects coming up. I admit that. Even if they're blue chip, these guys, they got like 3 or 4 of them that the Major League Baseball, if they put them in like sort of the top 100 prospects, they got 4 of those guys. One of them is like number 2. That's Vladdy Guerrero Jr. apparently is supposed to be like the real deal. Well, as you know, Ryan Leaf was supposed to be the real. There's a lot of guys on that list I could talk about being the real deal. It's the trend says everything's right. So what do? The halfway build is no good, and I just don't think you're going to see guys like Stroman walk out the door. And I think Josh Donaldson. I mean, my God, do you really want to cough up on that? So I think they're, I think of all Major League Baseball, I think they're in the toughest place because being in the middle sucks. I'd rather be teams that are, and again, it doesn't work quite the way it does in football, NBA, in hockey, where, if you tank out, you see what that NCAA product's going to be. So it might be a generational player. It doesn't really work that way, not necessarily in baseball. Sure, other draft picks, absolutely, but it's not that way. And quite honestly, I think if you're the Blue Jays, you're not that far to the bottom. Still is really far away. So even though that was their 10th starting pitcher last night, I think if you're the Blue Jays, I don't think you're tearing it down. But here out in Calgary, it's going to be like, my God, what is it going to be? 35 today? That just the day just seems to be calling my name to drink by a pool. Let's be honest, that happens a lot of days. Are we going to attempt a phone call, or is that not even? You're going to try a phone call? Who is it? Tony Al Montoya? Are we going to try? We're going to try Al Montoya to see if he can actually call, if this is going to work. This is going to be very exciting. Once again, it completely was a disaster. When the big tuna was on, Darren Tradition didn't make it. And let's see. Hello. Hello. That's.
That you're working the casinos in Alaska. That's true, man.
Is this Al Montoya?
That's what I told you years ago, man.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of things in that casino. You can do lots of cocaine.
Are you talking about cocaine? Okay, we can barely hear that. We can. It's okay. So once again, welcome to the Titanic. I'm just waiting for Eric Braden, who played one of the Astors on the Titanic, having cognac as the ship sank. So that was a try and a miss. So once again, thanks for joining us here today. So I'm going to I'm doing this. Here we go.
What?
Yeah. Calling it a day.
Best friends? Yep. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yep.
Yeah, I do.
It's time!
I'd like to thank Bruce Covington, who joined us here today. That was real nice catching up with him on that team that looked like unbeatable. The fact that they only won in '92, they could have won almost every year. They were so good. People looking forward to seeing Doug Flutie back. They just saw him in Toronto. I think you know you're a good quarterback when you have this tour of cities and every city you won in. So enjoy yourself. We're also going to talk to, I believe, Sean Hope Ross tomorrow, one of the trainers to the NHL Stars. Might have some players with him tomorrow. We'll do it live once again from the Elbow River Casino here in Calgary, the home of RawMikeRichards.com.